Hello, welcome to Kentucky Avery. My name is Susan Robertson, and today I will be discussing the topic of assessment and how to use assessments in your classroom. Assessment is an essential component of a multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS. Academic systems within an MTSS framework are commonly referred to as response to intervention. Assessments are key to understanding how students are responding to our instruction. Once teachers assess students and figure out their various strengths and areas of growth, they can then plan lessons and move students toward mastery. As educators, we should be thinking about how we will evaluate student learning before we begin planning lessons. Utilizing assessments in our classroom is a vital component of effective teaching. Therefore, assessments within a multi-tiered system can seem like an overwhelming task, and many educators have questions about this topic. Please pause this video and take a few minutes to jot down any questions that you may have about assessment on the guided notes page. Some of the questions you may have may be similar to the ones you are seeing on the screen. For example, what are the different types of assessments? How do assessments benefit the teachers and students? Or maybe you have a question about how assessments are used in an MTSS framework. One of the goals of this tutorial is to provide a structure for thinking about the many different types of assessments. Understanding the major categories and reasons for each type of assessment can help teachers narrow down the task of choosing assessments for your school or district. A second major goal of this tutorial is to explain how assessments can benefit both teachers and students at your school. And a final question addressed in this tutorial is which specific assessments could be used in your MTSS framework. First, let's take a minute to really think about assessments and what is a definition for the term assessment. Assessments are vital to student learning. It is our job as educators to use assessments to drive our instruction to meet the needs of the students. According to Stiggins, assessments is the process of gathering evidence of student learning to help inform educational decisions. When we use assessments to guide our instruction, we are able to differentiate the learning based on student needs. When thinking about assessments, we can classify them into three areas: summative, formative, and diagnostic. Each of these assessments serve a different purpose. As we go through this presentation, we will dig a little deeper into each type. Let's begin with summative assessments. Summative assessments are assessments of learning, meaning they are given after the learning has occurred. They provide evidence of student achievement and help educators make judgments about learning effectiveness. Many times, they are reported out to show different levels of achievement and if students have mastered certain skills or standards. Some examples of summative assessments include the following: end of term or unit exams, end of chapter test, or high stakes tests like the ACT, SAT, or in Kentucky, the state assessment, also called K-Prep. On the guided notes page, jot down the type of assessments your school or district uses to determine if students have mastered certain skills or standards. The second type of assessments we will discuss are formative assessments. While summative assessments are often described as assessments of learning, formative assessments are assessments for learning. They can be informal or formal and tend to be administered frequently. Formative assessments help teachers evaluate student learning as it is happening. These type of assessments guide teacher instruction and inform teachers and students of progress being made toward mastery of a standard. Some examples of formative assessment include informal types like entry and exit slips, observations, and anecdotal notes, plus teacher-made assessments. You can learn more about these type of formal assessments in our formative assessment tutorial. More formal formative assessments include pre- and post-tests, curriculum-based measurements, also called CBMs, universal screeners, and progress monitoring. Universal screeners and progress monitoring are key components in building an effective multi-tiered system of support. Thus, we will spend a few minutes discussing these two specific types of formative assessment. First, let's define universal screening. A universal screeners are systematic and are given to all students in a school. These screeners include social, emotional, and academic indicators, which schools have deemed important for their students. Universal screeners are a central component in the MTSS framework. They give educators information on how students are performing in relation to benchmarks and learning standards. Screeners assess all students within a school using valid measures in a core content area and are able to help identify students who may be at risk for academic struggles. Because universal screeners are a type of formative assessment that teachers give frequently, they are proactive. They allow teachers to identify students who have met benchmarks, exceeded benchmarks, and students who have yet to master the benchmarks. They are cost efficient, objective, and are given to all students. Listed are some common universal screeners that are utilized in many schools. In Kentucky, there are quite a few schools and districts that use the NWEA MAP assessment as a universal screener. To find out more about the reliability and validity of universal screeners, visit the National Center on Intensive Intervention Academic Screening Tools chart. The website is listed at the end of this tutorial. Which universal screener does your school or district give, and how often is it given? Another type of formative assessment that is used frequently in an MTSS framework is progress monitoring. You may be more familiar with the term progress monitoring at the Tier 2 or 3 level, but we actually progress monitor at all tiers. The purpose of progress monitoring is to monitor how students are responding to primary, secondary, and tertiary instruction. These brief, valid, reliable, evidence-based assessments allow a teacher to see if a student is making adequate growth and adjust instruction based on the results. Progress monitoring is given in regular intervals such as weekly, bi-weekly, and monthly. Some examples of these formative assessments include curriculum-based measurements, or more often referred to as CBMs, mastery measurements, as well as computer adaptive assessments. You may also learn more about progress monitoring tools at the National Center on Intensive Intervention and the Progress Monitoring Tools chart. Again, the website is listed at the end of the tutorial. Take a moment and jot down or discuss with your colleagues the types of formative assessments you use at your school or district. If you're not using any of these formative assessments, where could you start? The final type of assessment we will discuss are diagnostic assessments. Diagnostic assessments are individualized, take place before instruction begins, and pinpoint learners' needs as well as strengths. Diagnostic assessments are best used in conjunction with the universal screeners and assist the instruction with developing appropriate instruction or intervention. When thinking about diagnostic assessments for reading, we are looking for the learner's strengths and areas of growth relating to the 5 components of reading. This allows the instructor to determine which component of reading should be a focus. For example, if we have a student who is struggling in reading, we need information on what component of reading is causing the student to struggle. Is it phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, or comprehension? If the results of the diagnostic show that the student is struggling in the area of phonics, we can develop lessons to target that area of need and improve the student's phonics skills as well as help their reading skills. A math diagnostic helps teachers narrow down the specific area of struggle. The major content areas are on the top of the chart and include numbers and operations, algebra, geometry, measurement, and data and probability. Once teachers determine the content area a student is struggling in, they can focus on the process that is causing the issue. For example, if a student is struggling in numbers and operations, is it numbers and operations relating to problem solving, or reasoning and proof, or communication, connections, or representation? Listed are some various diagnostic assessments that teachers may use to gather information and pinpoint a student's learning needs. For example, a math diagnostic interview allows teachers to gather in-depth information about a student's knowledge and mental strategies when solving problems. whereas running records allows teachers to evaluate a student's oral reading and then identify patterns so that they can plan lessons accordingly. You may visit the National Center on Intensive Intervention to learn more about the various diagnostic assessments through their Diagnostic Assessment Tools chart. Please pause this video and take a few minutes to jot down any questions you have, as well as which type of diagnostic assessments you may use or are using. Today we have discussed various assessments in our response to intervention framework. I hope this tutorial has given you a basic understanding of summative, formative, and diagnostic assessments. If you are a teacher or an administrator in Kentucky, feel free to reach out to Kentucky A-BRI or visit the other tutorials on the Kentucky A-BRI website, kentuckyabrI.org.